What to take away from Big Ten Media Days. My top 5 takeaways from Kirk Ferentz and the 3 players that were sent to Indianapolis for the annual gathering in late July. Plus, a sit down with 2023 defensive line commit Maddux Borcherding-Johnson right here, week 199 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. This is from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Hawkeye fans, let's talk about health and performance optimization for a moment. Our sponsor, Ascent Nutrition, offers amazing products. It's actually owned by former Iowa graduate Lance Shuttler. Now, I've decided to partner with Ascent Nutrition because of their unique approach to human health. Ascent offers an organically grown, mold and mycotoxin-free coffee. It provides a pure, clean, and rich flavor without those pesticides that most coffees are treated with. They also offer an algae oil DHA, which is used to support brain health, memory, and focus, as well as proper nervous system development in adults, children, athletes, and even pets. Now, lastly, their unique crafted wild pine pollen is used to support cardiovascular health, hormonal function, and a healthy libido. Your purchase not only supports this channel, but the business of a former Hawkeye. Visit goascentnutrition.com or click the link in the description below and use the code Hawkeyes. That's the code Hawkeyes to receive 10% off your total order from Ascent Nutrition. Week number 199 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. 1 week away from 200 of these podcasts. Looking forward to that show in early August as we count down the days to the start of Iowa football version 2022. And Big Ten Media Days has come and gone here on this Thursday. I'm recording this on Thursday, July 28th. And a few interesting tidbits that we got from Kirk Ferentz in Iowa. There's certainly not going to be earth-shattering stuff typically announced during these events, especially for Kirk Ferentz in Iowa. Kirk did lead with a very long opening statement prior to his 15-minute, during his 15-minute media availability on the field in Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. But he did also speak kind of a poolside setting with some of the Iowa media, and we were able to grab some tidbits. So without further ado, I want to get to my top 5 takeaways from Big Ten Media Days. So we'll start at number 5. And that is the return game. Iowa losing Charlie Jones to the transfer portal, specifically to Purdue as he moves on to play for Jeff Brom's more pass-heavy offense. Certainly he'll get a chance to repeat as the Big Ten return specialist of the year. So who will replace Charlie this year at Iowa? Such a skill set that Charlie Jones gave to Hawkeye special teams. A few candidates that were mentioned specifically by Kirk Ferentz, one being Arlen Bruce. We know about Arlen's ability to break tackles, even though he's 5'9", maybe 5'10". He's got good elusiveness. I've compared him to a poor man's Rondale Moore, at least the potential is there from a physicality standpoint. He's a great athlete. Nico Reganey, another guy that Kirk brought up. Nico has returned punts in the past. I didn't think he was very good at doing it, frankly, but he does have experience, which if I'm Kirk Ferentz, I'm going to rely on that. Absolutely, I'm going to rely on that. And he's also your most veteran receiver, and you obviously need good hands. The coaching staff is not going to put you back there unless you can accurately and effectively field a punt. Caden Wetjen, here's another one that we haven't talked a whole lot about. JUCO transfer in, coming here as a walk-on, but certainly has an opportunity to be a scholarship guy. Looked good in the spring when he was out there. Iowa, of course, decimated by injury this past spring at receiver. But Caden Wetjen has good elusiveness. He's produced nice numbers at the college level, returning punts and kicks. Certainly a different animal once you get to the Big Ten Conference, but he'll have a chance this fall to compete. Terry Roberts, another one. All right, Terry Roberts, a guy who's an experienced guy, has been great on special teams as a gunner over the years and has a knack for being at the right place at the right time. Not a mistake guy that I'm aware of, right? I don't remember him making any really big mistakes, and certainly some mistakes on special teams can prove costly. Now, it's different when you're fielding these high punts with defenders coming at you full speed. Just ask Charlie Jones. But Terry's got an opportunity. Terry obviously plays in the Phil Parker defense, so you expect that he has good hands. We haven't really been able to see those hands because he hasn't had a ton of time as a cornerback in Iowa's defense. But he's certainly a leader on this team. Iowa, I would say they're deeper at defensive back than wide receiver, although specifically corner. I don't think they're real deep at corner. If you're looking at wide receiver versus corner, they're both of those positions are thin. I would rather take a risk with a corner than a wide receiver, given the track record for Phil Parker. But Terry Roberts was a guy that Kirk Ferentz brought up. And then Cooper DeJean, a fifth guy that was brought up in that discussion. Cooper DeJean, interesting because we talked about him in an earlier video on the YouTube channel during media days. He is listed as your starting cash on the preseason depth charts. And he's also listed as your backup strong safety, which I found intriguing. So what happens if Kayvon Merriweather goes down? Does DeJean go in? Do they slide someone over from free safety? Because if DeJean goes in for Kayvon Merriweather, then who plays cash? Is it Sebastian Castro? Could it be a corner that we're not aware of, a TJ Hall? I doubt it, but that's an intriguing position. Obviously, Iowa values DeJean's athleticism, which you love to hear. If you're an Iowa fan, you really like the fact that Kirk Ferentz is not dumbing down the athleticism of Cooper DeJean because he's still a young guy. But Kirk brought up the fact that he could probably play offense if they needed him to. And so could he be a factor in the return game? Maybe. And this is a specific skill set. We know returning punts and returning kicks is a very specific skill set. We've seen great Iowa players struggle to do that. Josh Jackson comes to mind. Really good cornerback, has made a nice living in the NFL, but struggled returning punts. And so it's not a skill set for everyone, but they've got a couple guys, Wetjen being one, that I think, I don't know if I'd say he's the favorite at this point, but they've got guys who have the athletic ability. Now it's about vision and reads. Can they develop that this fall? That's going to be a question mark. Number 4, my top 5 media takeaways, make the makeables. Kirk Ferentz talked about this. It seems like Iowa is taking the approach with this offense that, look, we don't need to overhaul the offense. There were a lot of plays that were makeable last year that we simply didn't make. Execution is key. Receivers open downfield were missing. Obviously, plays along the front 5, that offensive line that are very makeable, that make big differences. And I'm not denying that. I certainly, we saw that last season. Lots of plays blown up because Iowa's offensive line just flat out missed edge rushers or got bullied into the quarterback. How much receiver separation is occurring downfield? I don't know. Hopefully that's improved as the offseason has gone on. Certainly through fall camp, you'd expect that to improve, hopefully. But of course, the defensive backs are working as well. I cringe when I hear that a bit because we've heard that explanation from Kirk Ferentz over the years that we just got to execute better. We just got to be better at what we do. And I had said last season, at the end of last season, I thought it was time for an overhaul on offense. And I'm not a guy who says that every year. I've never said that. But when you're 123rd in total offense, you need to make drastic changes. So I hope Kirk Ferentz proves me wrong. I'm a bit nervous when I hear we just got to make the makeables, execute better, which would tell me that really there weren't a ton of changes offensively. There are going to be some. I'm not denying that. There will be some. I've said before, I think Brian is going to take more shots down the field, not because he necessarily wants to, but because he has to. I think you have to take some risk when you're perceived as a product of nepotism and you've produced an offense that's been inept for years now, especially last year, and maybe your clock is running out. I think certainly it's running out. He's going to take shots this year, but I don't think we're going to see an overhaul from a philosophy standpoint in general for the offense. Whether that's good or bad, we'll have to wait and see. And hopefully this fall, the receivers, the quarterbacks, the offensive line can all grow. Number 3, the quarterback competition is a 2-man race. Anybody who wants to say Joey Labus is still involved, it's an open competition, I will be absolutely shocked. I would say there's a 0.05 chance that Joey Labus takes the opening snap against South Dakota State on September 4th. Now, maybe that's too low of a chance because injuries do happen. Like if Padilla and Petrus both go down, I would guess that it's going to be Joey Labus. I would guess they're not going to start Carson May, who just got to campus. But like everything that you hear from the players, we're talking about Kayvon Merriweather, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, just the language from those guys speaking with the Big Ten Network during the week. Also, Kirk Ferentz speaking. I don't even hear Labus's name being mentioned anymore. I continue to hear about the growth process for Petrus and Padilla. I happen to think this is Petrus's job. I think it's extreme. I'd say there's a 1% chance Padilla ends up being your starting quarterback September 4th. I think there's no question about it. It's going to be Petrus. Now, he's going to have a shorter leash. All right. If he struggles, they've got a guy who's won games, and Kirk is right to bring that up, and he did bring it up this week. They've got 2 guys who have won games. But as you and I both know, Quarterbacks take way too much blame, take way too much credit. It goes both ways. There are times where you have to look back, many times last year, where you look back and say, look, Iowa won in spite of QB play. And if you can't acknowledge that, then you're probably not a fair and balanced fan. And that's okay. You're a homer. That's fine. But Iowa won in spite of QB play for the most part last season. It's got to get better. And you just hope that Labus is given an opportunity this fall. But from the language that we listened to during Big Ten Media Days from Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa players, this is a two-man race, if that. All right, this is a two-man race, if that. I think I think Petrus is the guy to beat right now, and we'll just see what happens in fall camp. But hopefully, all of those guys grow, and maybe Carson May will impress some people. He's not going to start this fall either, but again, this is a time for growth. Number 2, injuries hurt. We learned that Justin Britt, Iowa's projected left guard, is out for the season. Continued knee problems for Justin Britt, who has the athleticism to be a really good guard here. Will he return next year to Iowa? I hope so. He's an Indianapolis kid that has had potential and has had flashes, but just can't stay healthy, and Iowa needed him. They've now lost Tyler Linderbaum, Cody Ince, Kyler Schott, Justin Britt. You could argue, minus Connor Colby, Iowa has lost its top 4 interior offensive linemen for last year. So I am very concerned about the offensive line at this point. Very concerned. And it's still young. And that's what Kirk Ferentz continues to point back to last year. And I acknowledge it. Parts of the line were young. But there is going to be exceptional pressure on Jack Plum, on Connor Colby, on Mason Richmond. Those guys are going to have to play well because the interior, I just don't know what to expect. Will Tyler Ellsbury end up starting at your left guard spot? He's listed right now. Could it be walk-on Matt Fagan? I mean, that right now I'm concerned. Logan Jones is your starting center, but injuries hurt. Jackson Ritter also was announced that he is out for the season. Unfortunate because Iowa's not real deep at running at wide receiver. Not deep at all at wide receiver. And I think Ritter was your favorite to be your wide receiver 4 behind Bruce, Reganey, and Johnson. They lose Charlie Jones. They lose Tyrone Tracy. That's a disappointing loss. Even though Ritter was a walk-on, he did play some last year, had some game experience. Alec Wick now listed on the depth chart. Hopefully the Regina kid can come on strong, but that's not a position where you can afford to lose guys. And going back to my number 5, the return specialist candidates, I'll produce more content on this in the coming weeks, but I'm going to really be nervous. I'm going to wince, if I see Arlen Bruce, Nico Reganey, or one of the receivers. Wetjen might be a guy who could just be a specialist here for the time being, and he's probably not going to work into the rotation right away anyways, although I think he maybe has the potential to do that and surprise some people. But I'm going to really wince if I see Bruce or Reganey returning punts and kicks because, boy, you're just heightening risk for injury at a position at wide receiver that is very, very, very thin. Those 3 guys have to stay healthy at the top. They just have to. If you lose any one of those 3 guys, somebody's going to have to step up, and I just don't have a ton of confidence. So, yeah, my biggest positions of concern are the same concerns I had at the end of last season: wide receiver, offensive line, and quarterback. So injuries have been a factor here. And my number 1 takeaway from Big Ten Media Days, the good news here is Iowa continues to show really good personality and leadership on this roster. Think about this. Tory Taylor, I get he's not technically a senior. He's like 26 years old. And I think he's certainly in the good graces of Kirk Ferentz and this staff, and certainly LeVar Woods. He was not sent to Big Ten Media Days, and I think that's not a testament against Tory Taylor. That's a testament to the leadership and personality of guys like Jack Campbell, Kayvon Merriweather, and Sam Laporta. And I'm not saying anything about previous guys that have been sent to media days. I think typically Iowa develops really strong leaders, and that's part of the reason they're such a good developmental school, and they produce so many wins despite struggles on offense. Iowa certainly has a reputation for solid leadership at the top, but the fact that Tory Taylor stayed home because they had those other 3 guys that are leading the way, I think is a really good sign. We've heard Kirk a couple times bring that up during his media availability this week, that even back in spring, he noticed a different type of personality with this team. Again, emphasize leadership. They're still young at certain positions, but it sounds like even the young guys are really stepping up and being solid leaders. Kirk had nothing but good things to say about Xavier Wampa, who was not listed on the 2 deep, but I expect to be playing. It sounds like he's a leader already, even as a true freshman. So I like that. I mean, that's a that's a huge positive. That's why it's number one on my list, because if this team can exert really good leadership this fall camp, perhaps strides can be made offensively, which if you make strides offensively, I think the defense is going to be just fine. I don't think it's going to be I think there are certain areas of the defense that need to improve. Certainly against Purdue, it needs to improve. Purdue lost David Bell, but they gained a couple guys from Iowa who kind of have the inside scoop on the Hawks. And certainly Jeff Brom has schemed well against Iowa. So there are areas for improvement on defense, but the offense can just make a couple of strides, specifically in the passing game. Is the running game going to be up to snuff? I hope so. I don't have a ton of confidence, but I think pass protection right now might be my biggest concern. I do think having downfield runners in LaShawn Williams and in Gavin Williams is a positive. I think they fit into this mold of the offense maybe a little bit better than a guy like Tyler Goodson, certainly an Akram Wadley. So even if run blocking isn't the best, I think they can survive and stay ahead of the chains without a huge average. But, the passing game is mixing my three positions of concern: offensive line, quarterback, and wide receiver play. But overall, we're not going to learn a ton from Big Ten Media Days, but some good takeaways, and injuries are just bound to happen. They're just going to happen. You hope the rest of these guys can stay healthy through fall camp. All right, so Big Ten Media Days in the books. We'll await the start of fall camp, the Kids Day Open Scrimmage, and Iowa Media Day in later in August, in mid-August. But for now, we want to look forward to 2023. Iowa defensive line commit Maddux Borcherding-Johnson joining the show to discuss his decision to not only commit to Iowa football, to stay loyal to Kelvin Bell on this defense, but also his goals and inspiration growing up as a Central Iowa athlete. Maddux Borcherding-Johnson coming up after this. You may have heard of the real-life Hawkeye man cave known as Kinnick Under the Kitchen. Well, after lots of hard work, there's not much space left to paint, but the walls are exploding out for public consumption. Under the Kitchen is proud to announce that you can now purchase exclusive prints of some of your favorite Hawkeye legends, including wrestling great Spencer Lee, football players Tyler Goodson, Riley Moss, and Drew Tate, plus an all-in-one Murray family legacy print featuring Keegan, Chris, and Kenyon Murray himself. Signed and unsigned prints are available, making the perfect collectible or gift for any Hawkeye enthusiast. For more information on purchasing one of these outstanding Hawkeye prints, visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook. That's Under the Kitchen on Facebook. Pleased to be joined now by 2023 Iowa football commit Maddux Borcherding-Johnson from the heart of Central Iowa. Maddux, appreciate you taking the time to stop by the show. And I know you've been busy with lifting and enjoying your summer. You've got one more year of high school in front of you. But first of all, thank you for being here.
Oh, no problem.
So, Maddux, I want to talk to you. You were one of the earlier 2023 commits for this Iowa football class. And certainly the class has taken off. We can discuss that a bit. But let's talk about yourself to start this thing out, because that's the focus of this discussion. You just told me before we started recording that you're up to about 285, maybe closer to 6'4" than you are to 6'3".
Yeah.
What's it been like since you've committed to Iowa? What has been your focus? Has it been weight? Has it been strength? What specifically, besides just on field work, have you been focused on?
Well, a lot of speed. They talk a lot about being able to move and stuff in Iowa. And some guys, they focus a lot on being like, I can lift this much weight. But then when they show up to the practices and stuff, they can't move as well. And they struggle with that mobility and stuff. So I've been making sure that I'm gaining strength while staying mobile and stuff like that. So I'm always practicing footwork stuff and other things to make sure that I'm flexible and able to move correctly.
I'm curious. We're going to discuss your recruiting process, Maddux, but you're an Iowa guy. You go to your rivals profile, and I see Iowa and Iowa State.
Mm-hmm.
Were you born and raised a Hawkeye?
Yeah. I've been a Hawkeye fan for all my life. I've gone to tons of games in Kinnick, and my grandpa's a big Hawkeye fan, so I was born and raised.
So was there ever a possibility? I mean, I know you took I believe you took an unofficial to Iowa State. Was there ever a possibility of you becoming a convert and being a Cyclone?
I mean, I really did like Matt Campbell. He's a real great guy, and I know they had a pretty nice facility. I love their locker room. It's kind of like a futuristic nightclub kind of deal. But no, I don't think so. I think that the coaching and like what they produce at Iowa is just way higher than Iowa State. And I also felt like Kelvin Bell, the defensive line coach, he was just I felt I could connect better with him than I could Rashid. And Kelvin Bell is just so much more open-minded, and he's kind of just like straight to the point, doesn't coat anything, so sugarcoat anything.
So let's talk about that. Your relationship with Coach Bell, your relationship with, I guess we can start with Coach Bell. What you talked about, and I've heard that from other recruits. If I recall, I'd have to look back, but I believe in our discussion with Aaron Graves when he committed, he really spoke very highly of Coach Bell, and just Caden Crawford, same thing, just straight to the point. He's not going to beat around the bush, so to speak. What do you like about Coach Bell, and is he as personable as he's made out to be?
Yes, he tells you straight how it is. Like, he doesn't like tell you statistics or facts. He just tells you like what you need to know about Hawkeye football and what he does. I remember one of the most notable things I remember from him is he was teaching us like how many scholarships you get for D3, which is 0, then like D2, and then NIA, and then kind of like UNI and stuff. And he tells me that he can only have 16 guys in his room with a scholarship. And some guys, they like to stack up these scholarships, but then when it rolls around to commit, he has no more room in his classroom. So he just kind of taught me that you don't really wait around when you recruit. You just find the school you want and then you commit. So I thought that was really interesting and smart.
And that seems like that went into your decision making. We're going to talk specifically about why Iowa. But you obviously made a decision early. How much was Kelvin Bell a factor there in choosing and really not delaying the process?
No, he was a huge factor. I felt like he was probably he's probably the greatest person I've ever met in my life, honestly. He's real down to earth, and he's open-minded, and he loves, he reads a lot and stuff like that. He's just a real smart guy, and I feel like I could see myself developing really fast and quick with him in my corner. And I know I'd be spending a lot of time with him, so I feel like I don't really know if I could find anybody else that could beat out KB as a coach.
It's great to hear. Obviously, you talk to enough recruits, you realize that the closest adult that you're going to, I would assume, grow attached to is your position coach, Kelvin Bell. But certainly, you're going to have some degree of relationship with your head coach, Kirk Ferentz, and Phil Parker. Phil Parker and Kirk both, at their respective roles, two of the best in the country, maybe to have ever coached Big Ten football. What's your take on those two, and what's your experience like just getting to know those guys?
I know Phil Parker. He knows a lot about football. He's so knowledgeable in the sport, which I really like, because I feel like he could teach me things that I didn't even know was part of the rules or that I should know in football. I remember Kavion Merriweather. He was telling me that like Phil Parker makes you know like how like wide and long the field is and stuff like that. He just makes you know everything that can help you make up like these little things that can help you when you're playing.
And Coach Ferentz, so what's your experience been like with head coach Kirk Ferentz?
He has a lot of knowledge. He has really good communication skills, and I feel like it's easy to talk with him. And I feel like he doesn't treat you like he's way above you or treat like he's like a better person. He treats you on the same level, which I really like. He's just you and him. Like, I feel like he gives every player their own like respect and stuff. And like, he doesn't treat you as like a flock of players. He treats you as like an individual.
But it feels like as time has went on, and certainly Phil Parker taking over the defense following Norm's departure and the hiring of Kelvin Bell, that Iowa's really been focused on having 6 to 8 guys who are ready along that defensive line, game in and game out. We're not running 4 and 5 and getting winded by these Northwestern quarterbacks that run all over the field back, late 2000s, early 2010s. And I'm just curious, how does that appeal to you? Because obviously you're going to be sharing playing time, but it also gives a younger guy like you will be next year and in 2024 an opportunity to be in the rotation early. What are your thoughts on Iowa's philosophy there?
I feel like it's a great philosophy because it kind of utilizes everybody's strengths and weaknesses. So let's say if it's like a third and long play and maybe I'm not the greatest pass rusher, I know that I have 2 guys out there that are faster than me and taller than me that can take my position, and it lets me recuperate and focus. So it's not just a long strung out game like a high school football game where they always want their star players in, and then you're tired and stuff like that, and it can affect your playability. But I just feel like it's great to have that fluctuation of being able to change people in and out.
I do want to talk to you specifically about comparisons, and I'm always hesitant how I word this question because you are your own person, you're your own player, and certainly I think I'm confident in saying that Phil Parker, first of all, going back to him for a moment, everybody that I've ever spoken with, we're talking about some of the great defensive backs to ever play at Iowa, from Amari Spivey to, I mean, just everybody who I've talked to about Phil Parker have raved about him. So he's going to make you feel like your own player, your own person, which you are. But I'm curious, is there anybody in the NFL that has played at Iowa in the past that you model your game after? And I'll just tell you right now, the guys I think of when I look at you and watch your tape, the little bit of tape I've been able to get a hold of, Maddux, guys like Nate Budgeta, guys like Noah Shannon, guys like Cedric Lattimore. Am I wrong on that? Do you have a different answer to that question?
I kind of want to be like a Davion Nixon, I feel like. I know that he struggled with following the rules, and sometimes he'd do his own thing, but his aggressiveness and stuff like that is something that I really want to strive for my senior year. I always kind of like, I feel like I haven't like pushed myself to my max potential when I've played a game. I feel like I always kind of hold back, or it's just like a sport. But I feel like this year I'm going to come out with a chip on my shoulder and kind of act like him.
And you're not. You have the Luka Garza crossover move like he did in 2020.
I'm
Pick
working
six.
on that.
Okay. Maddux, biggest influencers in your life. This doesn't have to be sports, but you're obviously a mature young man, and I'm sure you've had plenty. But biggest influencers in your young life.
I'd have to say my mom. She's always been working hard and stuff like that, and she never had a ton of money when she had me. And right when she had me, she got pregnant with my brothers, and she was always kind of like struggling to be financial ready, but she always just worked her butt off. And now she helped me push myself to get, always making sure that I was getting enough food, making sure I could get to these camps and stuff, making sure that I could have like, I'm always on practice. I'm always on time to practice. I don't think I'd be here without her.
It's awesome to hear, man. Your recruitment, I'm going to go back to your recruitment process for just a second. As I mentioned before, you look at Rivals, and Rivals has got 2 schools listed. Were there other schools involved, other schools that ended up offering after you committed to Iowa? How involved were other schools besides the 2 powers here in the state of Iowa?
Well, I know that I took that unofficial visit to Nebraska, and I know that Wisconsin sent me a couple of like camps and stuff. I know Minnesota sent me a couple camps and stuff. I know that near the end of this school year, Notre Dame came by to our school and talked to my head coach about me and see if they had any other guys like me or something like that. But it's really been shut off. I don't really reach out to anything, and I don't post a lot, so I don't know if they've gotten to see a lot of me. So it's kind of dry ever since I committed, but I feel like I made a great decision instead of just waiting it out.
Maddux, I do want to ask you about the 2023 class because when you committed, the class was fairly sparse. It was small, right? There was a lot of work to do, and I'm not saying there still isn't work to do because there is, but this class has turned into a somewhat iconic class. I'll just say this. I went on the record and said that this stretch of recruiting for Iowa football has been, I think, unbelievable, given the changing landscape with NIL and the transfer portal and just, Kirk is in his 60s. I mean, that's going to always be used by other schools as negative recruiting. But I want to ask you specifically about this 2023 class. First of all, are you close to anybody else that's committed?
I feel like we're all close. We have a group chat. We're always talking to each other. On the official visit, we spent a lot of time together getting to know each other way better. And I feel like we all kind of like know each other personally and stuff like that.
And it feels like the commits for the 2023 class are very much like there seems to be a different era of, hey, now not only are we committed, but we are recruiters. Like I've seen so much. I haven't seen that in past years to this extent of all these guys like recruiting for the staff. How fun is it to kind of be part of that process?
It's kind of fun. One of the guys will send like a picture of a guy that we need. And he's like, hey, we need this guy. And then we'll all just start hitting him up and kind of talking to him. So I feel like he kind of helps them think of, oh, these guys are all close and they really want me. I should go to Iowa. And I feel like it's just fun.
I got to ask you about Caden Proctor because I knew that'd get a smile on your face.
Yeah.
Caden Proctor committing to Iowa last. Well, we're recording this here in early July. You were committed here just not that long ago, not too many days ago. Just your thoughts on Caden Proctor's commitment. Obviously, when you get a guy that's ranked as high as he's ranked, he's a Central Iowa guy. He's a 5-star kid. That's going to help. Just your thoughts on his commitment. And were you confident throughout his recruitment that he was a Hawkeye?
Yeah, I had my ups and downs with confidence because I feel like he really liked Iowa, but then I'd go to like the state track meet and I see him with like an Oregon jacket on, and it kind of like, whoa, Oregon. And I know we've had a couple of conversations about his recruitment process throughout, like seeing each other in different sports and stuff like that. So he's always been a little confident he'd come to Iowa, but I don't know.
And just your thoughts on the defensive line group as it currently stands. I mean, you're going to have some older guys once you get here next year that I think are coming along. Lucas Van Ness comes to mind being one. I think he's got a bright future. Logan Lee. And the guys who are there now, but also the guys I mentioned for 2022, Caden Crawford, Aaron Graves, I think is, I'm really high on Aaron and certainly yourself, but just your thoughts on the defensive line group that will be there once you arrive in 2023.
I feel like they have really good heads on their shoulders. Chase Brackney, I always know that he's working hard and pushing himself in the weight room, and I can't wait to see how he grows throughout the process of being in Iowa. And David Calker, he has a lot of heart. He fights every rep. We were working together at the Iowa camp, and we were really pushing ourselves. And I feel like we have such a good connection that we could really propel ourselves when we get to Iowa by how hard they work and how determined they are to be the best selves they can be.
I'm going to switch gears. Last couple of questions of this discussion, and again, appreciate the time, Maddux. But tell me about your experience living in Norwalk. You told me before we went on that you were actually born in the state of Iowa, not in Norwalk, but you've been in Iowa basically your whole life. Just what are your thoughts on growing up in? I've been in Norwalk. It's a small community, but it's a typical Iowa community. Just what's life been like in Norwalk?
It's been good. I feel like the coaches here really they saw my potential early, so they'd always try to push me to be the best self I could be. I feel like I wish we could get more kids down to Norwalk, get a bigger class with more athletic kids or stuff like that. So one thing that I struggled with in being in Norwalk was I'm kind of a guy that likes to push myself to be better than others. So then once I reached the top and I was kind of like one of the better kids in my class, I kind of like lost a little bit of a drive in my earlier middle school years. But after like all this reaching out from college coaches and stuff like that and pushing myself from kids that I see on Twitter and stuff like that, I feel like it's helped me a lot. But Norwalk is a great place. It's a close community. And I feel like the kids that do come to Norwalk are always pushing themselves to be hard in the athletics that they do, stuff like that.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, and I haven't been bringing it up in these types of interviews, but NIL has become such a big topic with recruiting. So I got to ask you, just your thoughts on NIL. Obviously, it sounds like Iowa is going to have a collective in place here soon, but was that ever a factor in your recruiting? I know you committed pretty early in the NIL discussions and whatnot, but what are your thoughts on that?
I didn't really feel like it'd be right to go to a school that offered me money to play, because I feel like my reason of playing should be for the passion of the game and not for this school's offer me like $500,000 and stuff like that. I think that the schools that do kind of do that, it's just not as I don't think the morals are there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you're a real good athlete, I guess you can go play for money, but I feel like, I don't know. I don't really have a good opinion on NIL. I feel like I could go either way with it,
but certainly you'll have an opportunity to benefit from your name, image, and likeness. And I thought Caden Proctor's words following his commitment were spot on, kind of just what you reiterated. And I think this class can kind of reflect that. And for that matter, the 2022 class, guys like Wampa and Aaron Graves. I didn't ask you about Wampa. Just your thoughts on being able to play with another Southeast Polk 5-star and Xavier Wampa.
Great. I feel like he also has a great head on his shoulders. I feel like him and Proctor are kind of similar with passion for the game and how they push themselves incredibly hard. I know I've heard that Wampa's was always the last one to leave the room when they're watching film and stuff. And I can't wait to see how that kid's career pans out at Iowa. I feel like he's going to be a great
and you'll play a lot of your career with him on the back end. So I'm sure you'll enjoy that. All right, last two questions, Maddux. Why Iowa? We've talked about all the different factors and the coaching staff and your your future teammates and whatnot. You obviously grew up an Iowa fan, but why ultimately was it so easy to make your selection that you wanted to be a Hawkeye?
There's a lot of different factors. I think one big factor is that Iowa spends the most on food in the Big Ten, so they really take nutrition seriously. I know they always have snack bars and stuff around the campus and facilities for us. I'd also say the people there, they're just great people, and I just like, I don't know, there's just real good people that like you can talk to and you don't feel like, oh, this is the big Iowa coach. I'm kind of like, it's like, no, it's hard to talk to them. I don't know how to word that, right? But they're just easy guys to talk to, and then their morals. It's just, let's just work as hard as we can to beat these guys to the ground. And I always loved watching the Iowa games, like Penn State versus Iowa. It's just, Iowa's just relentlessly beating, and they just never give up. And I just like that, the ideology that they have.
Absolutely. Great answer. Okay, final thing. Goals. Let's start with short term. We talked about weight, but you've got a senior year of high school football in front of you. What are you focusing on? What are your short-term goals?
For right now, before like all the games and stuff, I'm going to make sure that I'm taking all those little steps and stuff that I've learned throughout being at Iowa that Coach Bell has taught me. I make sure that I'm always supinating, I always got my hands correctly. I'm always going to make sure that I'm lower than people. So then when it does come to the game time, I hope my goal is just to be one of the most dominant forces in the Iowa this year for D-line. I also hope that, I know my brother, he'll be playing with me on the D-line, so I'm hoping that we have like a minimum of like maybe just only 100 yards, maybe even less than that ran per game, something like that.
Lofty goals, but I'm sure you and your brother can help the team meet those goals. And let's talk about long term. You know, I talk to football players and they say, well, I want to go to the NFL, and that's certainly a goal I think most young men have, and that's certainly a reasonable goal, but it can be anything. It could be related to your family. It could be related to profession after football. How would you sum up your long-term aspirations?
Well, I'd like to be a freshman All-American like Lucas Van Ness and Y.A. Black. I feel like that's probably one of my top goals. I want to be Big Ten player of the year. I want to be an All-American too. I think that's a good goal.
I love how you just rattle those off like they're nothing, but hey, I love it.
Oh, they're tough goals.
You need the confidence, and it sounds like you've got the confidence. Maddux, appreciate you taking the time to discuss your commitment to Iowa football. Defensive tackle Maddux Borcherding-Johnson from Norwalk, Iowa, who reportedly is up to almost 6'4", 285 pounds. Maddux, thank you for taking the time. We can't wait to see you in the black and gold in a year.
No problem.
Appreciate the time from another really nice kid from Central Iowa and Maddux. And of course, he'll join Iowa football in 2023. The defensive line in 2022 shaping up to be pretty deep and pretty good. We didn't talk about that in today's show. That'll be something we save for a future video, some future content here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. If you have not already done so, please hit that like button on this video. Don't overlook the little thumbs up. Please do that for us. It helps us in the algorithm. And please subscribe. Tell your friends about what we're doing. Content during the off season, post games this fall with the one and only Coach Don Patterson. Great stuff on the way. And if you want to sponsor the show, reach out to me through Twitter, Facebook. You can also email me from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. That's from the eye of the storm at outlook.com. But until next time, have a great day.